I am going to lecture. We're going to go over a couple programs for Chapter 11 today, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do. Next week is going to be lab all week in here, so your first assignment, I won't make it due till a week from Thursday. All right, but I'm hoping that you'll have it done by then, because I just don't want it so you fall too far behind. And when we get into the Android stuff, I'm going to give you very little that you have to turn in. All right, so that said, if you're not into Eclipse, please get there now, and I'm going to get started. So I'm going to do this a little bit differently, just so you know. So you say, oh my God, I've already been working on those. I don't think so. But this is what I had in here for Chapter 11. Okay, and what I've decided to do is this one right here that says month exception. I'm not going to give you that one. We're not going to do that one, period. What I'm going to do is right now I'm going to go over numbers 1 and 2. And then what I'm going to assign is I'm going to ask you to add some stuff to the program you're working on now, the one with the team leader and all the other stuff. I thought that would make more sense. Then you wouldn't have to be totally rewriting a program. You've already got a program that's working. And I thought that might make more sense to do that. I don't see anybody complaining right now. So, other than Mark, I see no one else complaining about that right now. I'm just kidding. Just kidding. So that's what we'll do. And then the one that's actually going to be assigned then, we'll just say update Chapter 10 program with exceptions. Now you say, well, what does that mean? Well, I've already got it out there. All right. So it says for the Chapter 11 program, make the following modifications to the employee, production worker, shift supervisor, team leader classes as necessary. Write your own exception classes. You can make them generic to handle, as much as you possibly can. So the employee name can't be blank and can't hold digits. So really the only thing that you should be able to put in for an employee name are spaces or letters. That make sense? All right. The number you're already doing. So that's, you're already formatting that. The hire date, I would recommend you do this. A couple people had talked to me earlier and they said, well, what about using the Java date class? The Java date class is a beast. It's not nearly as easy to work with as the date classes in some other languages. So you can do that if you want to, and there's plenty of documentation out there, etc., or I can try to help you. But I thought it would make the most sense. Just ask the person to enter in a month, ask them to enter in a day, and ask them to enter in a year. All right, if you want a little extra credit, you can account for leap years. All right, and I said, why don't we assume that the company was founded in 1950? All right, so in other words, when you were, for the hire date, you can't be hired before 1950 if the company didn't open up until 1950. It's not your birth date, it's your hire date. So, for the production worker, it should be numeric only and a 1 for day and a 2 for night. You can handle that any way you want. You don't necessarily have to even handle that with exceptions, but that's probably the best way. I'm going to try to break your programs, all right, for Chapter 11, because this is the one chapter where I really kind of, for lack of better words, force you to do a lot of work with exception handling. All right, and production worker annual pay rate. This, I consider this to be a reasonableness check, hourly pay rate. If you're making more than $250 an hour, please let me know where you're working. All right, and if you don't like those numbers, if you think it should only be like 25, then make it 25. It's okay. I just gave you what I consider to be some reasonableness checks in here. Shift supervisor salary, I figured this was maybe weekly. All right, so 3,000. All right, and the bonus up to 10,000. Maybe you don't give you give it once or twice a year, etc. And the same kind of thing with team leader. Does all that make sense? All right, and maybe as you go through it, maybe you'll see something that you think I missed or whatever, and that's fine if you want to add it. All right, so I'm just going to come in here, and like I said, I'm going to grab the or write the programs for Chapter 11, number 1 and 2 right now. So if you're not in Eclipse, please get an Eclipse. And there are going to be 2 different programs. So I'm going to just call them Test Scores 1 and Test Scores 2. So the first one I write is number 1, Test Scores class. So that's the one I'm creating right now. Does that make sense? And I'll just start the next one probably even just from scratch. So this is the first thing that we're going to write here. I've got them written already, is the testscores.java program, and we're going to have that. We're going to have the demo. All right. There's only going to be 2 programs in here. Did you hear that? There are 2 files. We're going to call built-in exceptions. What that means is we're going to call Java exceptions. When we do it the second time, I'm going to show you how you write your own exceptions. Because, for example, I can tell you to type in a 1 or a 2, okay? But for the let's say for it's your shift, and a 1 is day and 2 is night. I say type in a 1 or 2. Well, if you type in a 13, technically, you're not breaking any rules. That's an integer, right? But you're breaking a rule, and it's not a 1 or a 2. So we'll hit that second. Yes. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, did everybody see this? Because I know a couple of you have been burnt with this. For this use default location, make sure it's not, that's Adrian, that's the lab assistant who set that up. So if that's yours, don't have it there. So just click where it says use default location, click browse, go over and go onto your desktop or something like that, okay? Now when you do that, it doesn't tend to like this. So what I've found is I've got to literally add another folder underneath there. Does it? Okay. Well then let's try that. That sounds like it would be fun anyway. So browse. All right, make new folder. There you go. All right, so under the desktop, I'm just going to call this Java. In fact, ADV Java. Advanced Java. All right. And now it says next. Remember, you can click next, but you really don't have to. Here it's kind of redundant, so you just click finish. All right, little quick review on that. And now I've got test scores 1. I'm going to right mouse click. I'm going to click new, and I'm going to go down to package. All right, and as we said before, we're going to make it reverse domain name, so edu.blackhawk.jscott for me, and you can do yours accordingly. It's funny, I've been talking to a couple people that I know who literally are in the biz, so to speak, on our advisory committee and the like, and I've been telling them how I'm pushing standards at you, except they like that. They want that. They said it'll be much easier when you get jobs with them if you're already following standards, as opposed to say, do whatever the hell you want. All right, so I've got that. I'm going to finish. So now I've got my package. I'm again going to right mouse click, choose new, and now I'm going to go to class. And this one will not have a main in it because it's the demo that'll have a main in it. So I'm just going to call this one test scores 1. Did I do anything too fast? Did everybody catch on to that? We went in, we created a new project. I just called the project the same as the class. So I called the project test scores 1. Then I made a package underneath there. Then underneath the package, I made a class called test scores 1. Everybody cool with that? It's taking longer to explain this than it will be to do this first program. It's not long. All right. We don't need a main in here because we're going to write main in our demo. So I'm going to leave that unchecked, and I'm going to click finish, and it's got this. Now, unfortunately, that dimwit who does those notes for you, this one isn't bad. But if you open the one for chapter 11, that's not real good. So I'm going to literally just type it. I've got it here, and you can follow along with me or do whatever you want. You're not turning this in, so if you decide you don't want to type anything in there, then just don't. That's fine. But notice all I wrote. All right, right. I did do it right. Okay. I brought up a different one before. So this is good. Just copy that one. That's even better. All right. I didn't think I had that. And I'm going to paste it in at the top. So there's my comments. And again, I don't care. You know, I like to think at least I'm not that picky. So if your stuff doesn't line up perfectly or whatever, I don't really care. All right. So we've got that. All right. So one thing I do like to do, maybe it's just anal on my part, is to do that. I like that curly on a line by itself. Yes. Thank you. I appreciate that. I would have found out eventually when it didn't compile, but I appreciate that. All right. So this is first, I'm going to have a variable here to reference an array holding test scores. Again, I'll save all this when I get done too. So if you fall behind or whatever, it'll be out there. All right. Private, double, bracket, scores. Remember that, and I showed you this the other day, but I just want to say it again. So please look up here. I'm going to remove the line I'm typing in just a second. That when we do this, come on, it's also possible, it's legal in Java, instead of saying private, double, star, or bracket, scores, you can do this. That's okay. That's the C way of doing it. So Java allows you to do it either way. Most often in Java code, you'll see it done like this. And that's why I'm doing it like that. All right. I did put Java doc comments in mine. I know I'm probably the only one who does, but still, so at least you've seen the Java doc comments in there. And again, the constructor is actually going to be, or the comment rather for the constructor is almost going to be as long as the constructor itself is. Now, if you can stop for just a second, there's a mistake there. And just look up here. I want to make sure everybody understands this. And if you say, well, duh, that's good. Because it's fairly basic, but I still want to make sure you understand it. All right? So what is this saying? Remember, you cannot have a return value for a constructor. You may or may not remember that, but we did go over it last semester. So what this is saying, since it's test scores, and since it's the same, it's got to be test scores 1, and since it's got to be the same name as our class, you know that it's a constructor, correct? All right, everybody's cool with that? Now, what this says is I have to pass in an array that's of type double. And that array, while I'm in this program, will be referred to as S for scores. All right? And it's possible that this method can throw an illegal argument exception. What does that mean? You may have gotten one of those before if you ever asked a person to enter in, for example, their age, and you left it blank or you typed in hello or something like that. Then you're probably either going to get an illegal format exception or a numeric format exception, one or the other. Notice when you get these, it's one word. Illegal argument exception. It's one word. The worst one is array index out of bounds exception because it's really long, but that's still just one word. All right. So we're coming in here. All right, so I'm going to create a local array. And again, when I say this, I'm not trying to talk down to anyone, but I want to make sure everybody's cool with this. And that is this thing that you see right there, scores. All right, where it says scores equal new double. That's another way that you can create an array. So it's the name I'm going to, that variable right there that's in blue on line 34, that's not the same as the one up here. That one down here is local. I'm defining it in this method. And what am I saying? It's a new double, it's an array, and its length is going to be the same length as the array I'm passing in. All right, does that make sense? Then I don't have to worry about sizes or anything. It's always going to be the same exact size as the array that I pass in. All right, but I showed you this so you can see that there's another way that you can create arrays. Arrays are objects, so it is legal when you create an array to use the new operator. Just like, and we looked at this last semester, but I'm going to remove this right away. But if I say string, string. Whatever. But if I say, for example, string, and I come in here and say string name equals Jeff, then if I come down here, I could have said name equals new string, and I can put it in parentheses. Usually I think you see it in parentheses. So what I'm telling you is those two lines both do the same thing. Notice there's no errors by either one of them. I'm not going to use that in the program, but just so you see that. In much the same way, most of us are used to creating an array like this, but it's legal to create one like that too. All right. Now, does everybody, I'm taking it that everybody has this. I don't care, like I said, if you typed in the Java doc comments or not, but I'm going to just move up a little bit, so hit enter a few times so you can see that there. There we go. again, if you take just a second and look up here, in English, what this is saying is I want to do a copy. However, if what I attempt to copy here, is out of range, if it's less than 0 or if it's greater than 100, notice what I'm doing. Throw new illegal argument exception. All right? We're going to talk about this in much more detail on Thursday. That's it for the constructor. Now I've got to write my get average, and then that's it. That's it for this part of the program. And then the demo, which is about as long as that was. So I'll give you a second so you're sure you can get all that keyed in. Again, for those of you, and you know who you are, who are a little typing challenged, I will save this when we get it all done today. All right? Not going to go any further because I got a feeling some of you are still in the area here that's blue, so I don't want to scroll it off the screen so you can't see. See anything that's underlined or whatever here. There's no squiggly, so I don't think I made any mistakes typing. Hope I didn't at least. Is there anybody still typing in this area here that's in blue? And if you are, it's okay. Just let me know. No? All right, then I'll move it up a little bit. Whoop, there. And that's it for the testscores.java. So we just have to write the demo program for it, which I'll do in just a second. This line right here, this is a shortcut for saying total equals total plus scores sub I. Now, I'll go over this in just a second, but I want you to realize if you look up on the screen here, I tried to keep the size of this down. I could have created another variable called average in here. I could have made double average equals 0.0. Then I could have said average equals total divided by scores.length, return average. That would have been totally fine. But I'm only using that line in the return statement. So to me, it didn't really make sense to create another variable to do that. It's not that what I did is right or wrong. It's just that it's a procedural way of looking at it. All right, it made the method just a little bit smaller. So what do we have in here? Taking it from the top, and I'll come back to the bottom, so don't worry. Under our package, all right, public scores, test scores 1, our constructor, as it says, it initializes an object with an array of test scores. So you pass an array in. The problem is, we could pass in an array that already had bad values in it. All right. Now, what I'm not covering here is I'm only covering the illegal argument exception. All right. And we're not covering like number format exceptions. So I'm assuming that at least you're going to pass in numbers. Does that make sense? And also to try to make it a little bit better, easier, whatever, I made that a double. You never know when somebody's going to pass in 88.3 or whatever. And if you make it ints and somebody does pass in something like that, it'll blow up on that too. All right, so that's why I just made it all doubles. So again, what we're going to end up doing in here is this, as it says, this is a local array that can hold at most every score that was passed in as S. Then what we're attempting to do here is to copy things from the array that we passed in to this new one that we just set up. But we have to check, because what we were told in the requirements is that the test score must be between 0 and 100. And I can tell you for a fact that one of the ones we're going to put in here when we go and write the demo program will be illegal, purposely. We'll have two arrays. One will have all legal values of 0 through 100. One will have an illegal value. So the idea is when we get to that illegal value, the program should stop, and you should see on the screen illegal, or it should throw an illegal argument exception, which will tell you the element number and what that score was. All right. Now I will tell you, and you'll see this when we go through the chapter on Thursday, that virtually every programming language that you learn in this program has some form of try-catch, including Java, JavaScript, PHP, ASP.NET, C#. All right? But the recommendation is that you use try-catch blocks like this as little as possible because they can really slow a program down. Sometimes you have no choice. But if you're telling a person to enter in a number and you know they're going to enter in a number, you just know it. Let's just say they're doing it from a numeric keypad, and that's all they can enter. Then you're much better off using an if statement to make sure that they're between 0 and 100 as opposed to a try-catch. Because try-catches can slow programs down. With what we're doing here, what's the difference if it takes 3 seconds to compile and run or 4 seconds? There is no difference. But on some actual application programs, the amount of time something takes could be paramount. It could be really important. So the idea, again, we've talked about this before, and I can say it now so I don't have to repeat it again on Thursday. And that is basically, when you think about it, there's 3 different ways to handle errors. Number 1 is to hope they don't happen and don't do anything. So I call it the ostrich method. You know how the ostrich goes and puts its head in the ground and just lets the world pass it by. You're doing it the same way, but then you're assuming that the people running the program, your users, always know what they're doing. That's about the worst assumption you can ever make. All right? The second one is you can let bad data in, and after the bad data is in, you can try to grab it, typically like with if statements. All right? So that's another way you can do it. What you typically try to do with object-oriented programming languages is you try to catch it at the source. So you try to catch it as soon as it's input, if possible. All right, so really I probably could have had like try catches inside of the demo instead of having them here. All right. Everybody get a chance to type all that in? All right, so I'm going to create the demo for it. So again, I'm going to do a file, new, class, and I called it test scores 1, so I'm going to call this test scores 1 demo. And this one, I will need to have a main in it, so you can see how I've got it set up here. And there's probably, I don't know, I would guess about 20 lines of code in here, something like that. But again, I put in comments, so hopefully if you go back and look at it, all right, that's why I'm saving mine, because you may or may not be taking the time to write the comments. But I am, in case you're using these kind of as a template when you're working on the homework, geez, I don't remember why he did that. That's why I'm trying to put a comment in here. All right. All right. So here's the second one. Again, I'm going to get rid of this, and I don't need that to do. Oops, that's what I want there. All right. Again, I haven't probably been doing nearly as good a job on this as I wish I would have, but I can just, this program demonstrates the test scores 1 class. Not a lot of comments, but at least there's something there. Now what you're going to notice is I'm going to put in about 10 lines or so of code, and then I'm going to just do a copy and paste. because it'll save us a lot of time. I'm going to do the same thing, but the first time I do it, I'm going to have a try-catch block where I'm going to put in the bad scores. Then I'm going to do the exact same thing, but I'm going to change it from bad scores to good scores. All right? Do you see right here? Because I had to look at what it was. Can you tell how I get the X here and it's the mark here? You can't have a try by itself. All right? You can have a try without a catch. You can. But then it needs a finally. And you're going to get this on Thursday. But the syntax is try to do this, catch these errors, and finally if you want to do something regardless. All right? So I'm going to catch here. And notice as soon as I did that, all the writing there went away. All right, squigglies, etc. All right, again, if you look up here, so what I want to do when I get done is I want to do this same stuff that I'm doing right here. Exact same stuff, except instead of having bad scores, I want to have good scores. So if you really like typing, feel free to type it in again, but since I realize that I'm going to be doing a lot of duplication here, I'm just going to do a copy, come down to here and paste it in, and then create a test scores object with good scores. So instead of T bad, I'm going to have T good. That should execute. Thank you. So it's the same stuff. So I can put the whole thing just about on here, but now, of course, is the big test. So I've got to save it, and let me try to run it and see if I made any mistakes in here. Invalid score found. Element 3, score 101. Average of bad scores is 90.25. And I'm wondering if that's right or that's down here. See that? That should have said average of good scores. See that? So that was a mistake I made. So let me save it and run it again. So it does work. Now there'd have to be a lot more testing that was done. I'd have to make a lot more objects and try negative numbers, etc. Make sure that, I don't know if I put 0 in here, but I should have, to make sure that I didn't, but I should have made sure that 0 worked, etc. All right. And I could put a 0 in there. It would change that average quite a bit, but I could add a 0 in here. There's no reason that bad score and good score have to be the same size. So I can put 0.0 there. run it again, notice how my score went way down because there's one more score, but it's a 0. But it did handle 0. It didn't blow up, so that's a good thing. So as far as I can tell, at least, this first program works. So again, taking it from the top, what we did here was inside of main, all right, which is where we are. So in main, the whole thing, what, 45 lines, so it's not real long. But inside of main right here, we created 2 arrays. One of the arrays, and notice it said at location 3, because remember arrays, location 0, location 1, location 2, location 3. All right, I didn't have to put point 0 there. All right, I just tried to put a point something on all of them just because it was doubles, but even if you don't, it's okay. So we created 2 arrays, one that has a bad score, one that does not have a bad score. Then we created 2 objects, a bad test score object and a good test score object. And I said, all right, go through all this stuff, and when you go through here, call get average. First with the bad ones, and then with the good ones. All right. And remember, we had a problem that it actually found our problem in here. Because we tried, when we came through right here, that's where it was throwing that error. Because we had a number in, it was not less than 0, but it was greater than 100. And I'm watching what people are doing too, especially the first year, and I know you've all gone through these trials and tribulations also. But just remember, that the most common mistake people make is this one. If you know of a number that's both less than 0 and greater than 100, tell me what that number is. But I see people do that. And that's a logic error, and that's an unbelievably hard logic error to find. Because you think you're infallible. I wouldn't do that. Somebody else must have come in here while I had the machine locked and I was gone for a couple minutes. Known my password, gone in there and changed it. All right, yeah, whatever. But I do it. Everybody does it. Everybody but John does it. Any questions on the demo or on this itself? Now the good news is the next one that we're going to create, I'm looking at it, and we can use, we're going to have to make some changes to it, but we can use the demo, and we can use pretty much both of these, both the ones that we have here. What's that? You don't get any errors? That's the bottom. Yes. Yes, that says that something that got passed in here was illegal. All right, and as always, and I've said this to you before, so I'll come right back, so don't, I'll bring it back in a second. But I want you to see this. If I come through here, and I go to java.sun.com, you've seen this before, but I don't know if what I'm about to show you, if I've shown you this before or not. So if we come here, and we go to downloads, Java APIs, and now it's 8. When we did it last semester, it was 7. But if I come down here far enough, come on. There's exception. All right, so here's the exceptions that Java has. And you'll notice they're hyperlinked. All right, so what was it? Invalid argument? Illegal argument? Okay, illegal class. How about letting the system find it for me? Well, there. How about there? Illegal argument exception. All right, thrown to indicate that a method has been passed. Well, that, not real much in it, but they will show it. They'll show how it can be called. They'll give an example of it, etc. So as always, when you want to know this stuff, the problem is, you look at these, well, geez, there must be 100 of them. That'll handle everything. No, it won't. as far as I know, and I'm going to look right now, so I'm going to literally put my mouse right here. Let's assume for a second that I ask you to enter in your age. And I assume that the valid values for age are 1 to 125. Okay? I think that's pretty safe. My guess is if I go and do a search right now and I type in age, all right, yeah, there's image, but let's see if it's got anything else. They're all image, message, garbage. In other words, there's no age exception. So if I tell the user to enter in an age and they put in 208, you really have no way of knowing other than that's a reasonableness check that what they put in is bad. So that's the kind of case where you'd have to handle with your own exception. So even though there's a lot of them, I'd say probably if there's 100 in here, I probably have used 10 in all the time I've been teaching this, and no more than that. And again, one of the ones that's in here someplace, okay, then I'll have to get it from here, that's fine. So these have got all the individual exceptions on the side here. All right, and I went past the one I wanted to show you, but there. That's the longest one I know of. Array index out of bounds exception. What does that mean? You set up an array like we just did. Let's say that we said that the array had 7 members in it. And I put in the name of the array, then 10 in the brackets where I'm doing it out of range. Yeah, that's exactly what it is. Yeah. Questions on that? I'll go back to it. I know some of you might have still been looking at what was in here. Whoops. Okay, and that's, again, we're going to go over this on Thursday, but just so you know, if you said exception E, then you probably had this. That's the most general exception of all. The problem with that is Java has a tendency to grab stuff that would normally just would be flagged as a warning and make it an exception. The exception will stop the program. Not only that, if you decide you're going to do that, that has to be the last exception. You can have as many of these as you want in there. That has to be the bottom one. Because since it's so generic, if you have it at the top, you'll never get to the other ones. So you've got to go from your most your most specific exception has got to be at the top, and as they get more general, you go down to the bottom. And as Zane just said, if you have just exception there, all right, and not only that, that's what that E is just for exception. You can call it Mark and call it Mark if he wants to, but then it's going to be mark.getMessage. And notice we've got invalid score found right there, and it says e.getMessage, and when we ran this, all right, there was nothing more to it, just the invalid score found. But e.getMessage, what that's supposed to do is if there's anything extra that the system is going to provide for a message, by putting the e.getMessage, that'll give it to you. No, what I'm telling you is what it will do in here, the exception.getMessage, what that'll do, it's anything that's extra in there that the system puts in, it'll basically combine that to yours, onto yours. All right, that's we've got the plus in there. All right, so it does go in and it finds the stuff that we had from over here, but there's nothing extra that the system is writing in. And if there was something extra, it would show it. All right, any questions on that? All right, we're going to take a break, and then when we come back from the break, we'll come back at 5 after. When we come back, I'm going to copy those 2 files, the test scores 1 and the test scores demo 1. I'm going to use those as my baseline and make a test scores 2, because that'll go a lot faster then. We'll just make the changes that we have to make. All right, but we're going to have another new file in there where we're going to write our own exception. Did you, well, okay, under your, right here? Down here? You could have spelled it incorrectly or made the... Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, and I should have mentioned that before. If I make this bad right here, it's going to go, I thought it'd go squiggly. Shows you what I know. Yeah, it does. And that's because I'm literally defining that variable in here, so it only exists in that block. And since I didn't make it good here, it doesn't know that that variable even exists, because technically it doesn't exist. Then make sure here, just make sure that you've got T good there, good scores, and T good. All right, let me just stop the run here and I'll come over